Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Blood Runs Cold. Boyd Callahan always believed family was sacred. At 52, he'd built his construction empire from nothing, turning Callahan Builders into one of Boston's premier luxury home developers. His calloused hands and weathered face told the story of decades of hard work, but those same hands had always been gentle with his family. The sprawling colonial home in Brookline's most exclusive neighborhood had been his masterpiece, designed and built by his own company as a testament to his success. The 5-bedroom house, with its meticulous landscaping and custom finishes, had been featured in architectural magazines. Boyd had built it for Denise, his wife of 26 years, and their 2 children, Liam and Amber. "Dad, you promised to help with my application," Liam reminded him one evening in late August as Boyd returned home from a particularly grueling day at the construction site. Boyd rubbed his temple, leaving a smudge of dirt. "Right, sorry. Your Boston College application. Let's look at it this weekend." Liam, 18 and eager to follow his father into business, nodded. "Mom says you're too busy. She says you're always too busy." Something in his son's tone made Boyd pause. It wasn't the first subtle jab he'd heard repeated from Denise's lips. Over the past year, the distance between him and Denise had grown. He'd blamed his expanding business, the stress of their son's college preparations, and their daughter Amber's rebellious teenage phase. Denise had changed too. Her honey blonde hair was now expertly highlighted, her wardrobe more expensive, her social calendar increasingly filled with events Boyd wasn't invited to. He'd noticed, of course, but hadn't wanted to face what those changes might mean. Boyd walked into their bedroom that night and found Denise's phone lighting up with a text message from someone saved as T. The preview simply read, "Miss you. Can't wait until." The rest was hidden, but it was enough. The next day, instead of going to the site of their newest development in Cambridge, Boyd followed Denise. She drove her Mercedes to the Harbor Club, a private members-only establishment that Boyd himself had helped renovate 5 years earlier. She wasn't alone for long. Trevor Wakefield was Boyd's brother Neil's oldest friend. The investment banker with his perfect teeth and designer suits had always grated on Boyd's nerves. Now, watching Trevor's hands settle possessively on the small of Denise's back as they entered a private dining room, Boyd understood why. Instead of confronting them immediately, Boyd did something that would later define his approach to revenge. He watched, he waited, and he gathered information. Over the next 2 weeks, he documented their meetings, photographed their intimate moments, and recorded their conversations from afar using equipment borrowed from a security contractor friend. When he finally confronted Denise with the evidence, she didn't cry or apologize. Instead, she straightened her spine and said, "Boyd, we've been growing apart for years. Trevor understands me. He sees me. And our 26 years of marriage? Our children? Does he see them too?" Boyd had asked, his voice eerily calm. "I want a divorce," was her only response. What followed was a war. Denise hired Maxine Duval, the most cutthroat divorce attorney in Massachusetts. Suddenly, Boyd found himself portrayed as a workaholic with anger issues, a man who'd neglected his wife emotionally for years. The narrative was crafted so skillfully that even Boyd sometimes questioned his memories. The worst betrayal came when his own family began to side with Denise. First his sister Fiona, then his brother Neil, and finally his mother Dorothy, all seduced by Denise's calculated tears and Trevor's smooth talking. "She's the mother of your children, Boyd," his mother had said during a tense family dinner. "Perhaps if you'd paid more attention to her needs, this wouldn't have happened." Boyd had looked around the table, at the family he'd supported and loved for decades, and seen nothing but judgment in their eyes. That was the moment the first seed of revenge was planted in his heart. The divorce finalized in May. Denise got the house, primary custody of Amber, who was still a minor at 16, and a generous settlement. Boyd moved into a sparse downtown apartment overlooking the harbor, where he spent nights staring at the dark water, planning. Chapter 2. The Thanksgiving Ultimatum. October brought with it chilled winds and the first test of Boyd's post-divorce family dynamics. Liam visited his downtown apartment, clearly uncomfortable with the sparse furnishings and bachelor pad atmosphere. "Dad, you should get some actual furniture," Liam said, perching awkwardly on one of only 2 chairs in the living room. Boyd smiled thinly. "I'm rarely here. How's your mother?" An uncomfortable silence followed. "She's good. She and Trevor are talking about opening an interior design firm. Mom's always had a good eye for that stuff. Boyd's jaw tightened. With what capital? Liam looked away. I think Uncle Neil is investing. And Grandma. The betrayal cut deeper. His own family was financing his wife's new business venture with her lover. Boyd changed the subject, but the information festered. As November approached, Boyd received a text from his sister Fiona. Family Thanksgiving at Mom's as usual. Denise and the kids will be there. Mom says you're welcome to come if you can be civil. No scenes, Boyd. He called her immediately. What do you mean, no scenes? I've never made a scene in my life. Fiona's sigh was heavy with condescension. Look, we all know you're still bitter about the divorce. But it's been 6 months, and frankly, Denise is still family. The kids need both their parents, and Mom needs all her children. You can come, as long as you keep your mouth shut and don't pull one of your pathetic displays of temper. Boyd's hand tightened around his phone. Let me get this straight. My ex-wife who cheated on me is welcome without conditions, but I need to behave myself. Trevor will be there too, Fiona added, as if it were an afterthought. He's been really helpful with Mom's investment portfolio, and Boyd cut her off with a bitter laugh. Don't worry. I'd rather eat with strangers than sit with traitors. The weeks before Thanksgiving revealed more betrayals. Boyd learned that Trevor had been meeting with his mother weekly, helping with her finances. His brother Neil and Trevor had started playing golf together regularly. His daughter Amber had been posting social media photos with Trevor captioned, Sunday Fun Day with the coolest almost stepdad. Each discovery was methodically noted in the leather-bound notebook Boyd had started keeping. He didn't rage or drink himself into oblivion like colleagues had suggested. Instead, he recorded, researched, and remembered. The day before Thanksgiving, Boyd received a call from his mother. Boyd, darling. Fiona tells me you're not coming tomorrow. That's right, Mom. I'm not welcome under your conditions. Dorothy Callahan's voice hardened. Don't be dramatic. We're just trying to maintain peace. Trevor has been so generous with his time, helping me sort out my investments. Did you know he's increased my portfolio by 15% this year alone? Boyd closed his eyes. Mom, are you really falling for this? The man who helped destroy my marriage is now managing your money. That's exactly the attitude we're trying to avoid at dinner, she snapped. Your marriage was failing long before Trevor. Denise has explained everything. I'm sure she has, Boyd said quietly. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. After hanging up, he made his first real move toward revenge. He called Vince Moretti, an old friend from his early construction days who now ran a private security firm. I need information, Boyd told him. Everything you can find on Trevor Wakefield, financial records, personal history, the works. And I need surveillance on my family, all of them. On Thanksgiving Day, while his family gathered without him, Boyd sat in his sparse apartment eating a microwave dinner. His phone buzzed with a message from Liam, showing the family around his mother's table. Denise was seated in Boyd's usual place at his mother's right hand. Trevor sat beside her, his arm casually draped over the back of her chair. Everyone was smiling. The caption read, Wish you were here, Dad. Family isn't the same without you. Boyd studied the photo intently, noting who sat where, who was smiling genuinely, who looked uncomfortable. Then he texted back, Enjoy your dinner, son. Things will be different next year. I promise you that. Chapter 3, The Breaking Point. 5 days after Thanksgiving, Boyd's carefully contained anger finally erupted. The catalyst was a seemingly innocent lunch with his mother at her country club. I've been meaning to discuss something with you, Dorothy said as they finished their salads. At 76, she remained elegant and sharp, her silver hair impeccably styled. I'm updating my will. Boyd nodded. Estate planning was sensible at her age. Do you need a recommendation for an attorney? I know several good ones. Oh, Trevor has already connected me with someone excellent. Dorothy waved dismissively. That's not why I'm telling you. I wanted to prepare you for some changes. Boyd felt a chill. What kind of changes? Dorothy straightened her napkin. I've decided to leave the lake house to Denise. She's always loved it, and she's promised to keep it in the family for Liam and Amber. The lake house in New Hampshire had been in the Callahan family for 3 generations. Boyd had spent every summer of his childhood there and had renovated it himself 10 years ago. You're leaving my grandfather's house to my ex-wife. Boyd kept his voice low, but his hands were shaking. She's still the mother of my grandchildren, Dorothy replied defensively. And frankly, Boyd, you have plenty. The construction business, your investments. Denise is starting over. Starting over with the man she cheated with, using family money, Boyd said. Mom, can't you see what's happening? They're manipulating you. Dorothy's face hardened. That's exactly the kind of accusation that's driven this family apart. Trevor has been nothing but helpful. He's increased my investment returns substantially. May I see the statements? Boyd asked. That's private, Boyd. You don't trust anyone anymore. As they parted, Boyd kissed his mother's cheek mechanically. I hope you know what you're doing. That evening, Vince Moretti called with his preliminary findings. You're not going to like this, Boyd. Tell me. Your brother Neil has taken out a second mortgage on his house. Nearly $300,000. The money went directly to a new business entity called Porter Designs. Porter was Denise's maiden name. Boyd felt his blood pressure rising. Continue. Your sister Fiona has invested $150,000 from her retirement account into the same company. And your mother? Vince paused. Your mother has made Trevor the co-trustee on her living trust. He now has signing authority on all her accounts. Boyd sat in silence, absorbing the information. There's more, Vince continued. Trevor Wakefield isn't who he claims to be. His real name is Trevor Wilson. He changed it 15 years ago after some questionable investment schemes in Florida. Nothing that led to charges, but enough that he wanted a fresh start. My family has handed their finances to a con man, Boyd said flatly. It looks that way. And from what I can tell, he and Denise have known each other for longer than you might think. I found evidence they connected on social media at least 4 years ago. For years. The betrayal had been happening under his roof for 4 years. After hanging up, Boyd received a text from his daughter Amber. Dad, why are you investigating Trevor? He told everyone you hired someone to spy on him. Grandma is really upset. Before Boyd could respond, his phone rang. It was Liam, his voice breaking with emotion. Dad, what did you do? Everything's falling apart. Mom is crying. Grandma says she never wants to speak to you again, and Uncle Neil is threatening to sue you for harassment. Please help us fix it. Boyd closed his eyes, feeling a cold clarity wash over him. I can't fix what they've broken, Liam, but I can make sure they all pay for their betrayal. Dad, you're scaring me. Don't be scared, son. Be prepared. Things are about to change. That night, Boyd Callahan made the decision that would alter all their lives forever. He opened his laptop and drafted an email to Patricia Trish Donovan, his longtime friend and attorney. The subject line read, Operation Clean Slate. The first phase of his revenge had begun. Chapter 4, The Architect of Vengeance. Boyd's downtown apartment transformed into a war room. The spare white walls became covered with photographs, financial documents, and diagrams all connected by red string. At the center was a family photo from Christmas 2 years ago, everyone smiling, unaware that within 24 months, they would be enemies. Patricia Trish Donovan reviewed the documents spread across Boyd's dining table, her expression grave. At 55, Trish had been Boyd's attorney for over 20 years, handling everything from business contracts to his divorce. This goes beyond legal revenge, Boyd, she warned, tapping a folder containing Vince's investigation. You're talking about systematically dismantling your family's financial security. Boyd poured them both a glass of scotch. They dismantled my life. They chose Denise and that con man over blood. Trish sighed. The evidence against Trevor is concerning, I'll grant you that. But your mother is an adult who can make her own financial decisions, misguided as they may be. She's being manipulated, Boyd countered. They all are. What exactly is your endgame here? Trish asked. To leave them all penniless? To send Trevor to jail? What will that accomplish besides alienating your children permanently? Boyd walked to the window overlooking Boston Harbor. My endgame is justice. They need to understand the consequences of betrayal. In the following weeks, Boyd executed the first part of his plan with surgical precision. Using connections from his decades in construction, he identified a property adjacent to his mother's estate, a rundown mansion that had been on the market for years due to its exorbitant renovation costs. Through a series of shell companies established by Trish, Boyd purchased the property anonymously. The mansion would become the stage for his revenge. Meanwhile, Vince continued gathering intelligence. Boyd learned that Denise and Trevor's relationship was already showing cracks. Trevor had been seen arguing with Denise outside their design studio, and financial records showed their business was hemorrhaging money. largely because Trevor was siphoning funds into his personal accounts. They'll be looking for more investments soon, Vince predicted. Your family members are the obvious targets. Boyd nodded, making notes in his leather-bound book. That's what I'm counting on. The next phase required Boyd to appear vulnerable. He arranged to run into his brother Neil at their regular barber shop, where he made a show of being distracted and disheveled. You look like hell, Neil observed bluntly. Boyd gave a defeated sigh. Life's taking some unexpected turns. I'm thinking of moving out west, starting fresh. Neil's interest was immediately piqued. Really? What about Callahan Builders? Might sell it, Boyd mumbled. Too many memories here. The calculated rumors spread like wildfire through the family. Within days, Boyd's phone was ringing with calls from concerned relatives, all except his mother, sister, and ex-wife. Boyd's daughter Amber came to his apartment, her first visit since the divorce. At 16, she had Denise's blonde hair, but Boyd's intense blue eyes and stubborn chin. Is it true you're leaving Boston? She demanded without preamble. Boyd gestured for her to sit. I'm considering my options. But your business is here. Our family is here. Amber's voice held accusation. You'd just abandon everything? Our family, Boyd repeated with a bitter laugh. The family that uninvited me from Thanksgiving unless I kept my mouth shut? The family that's financing your mother's business with her lover. Amber flinched. That's not fair. Mom and Trevor love each other. And when did their love story begin, Amber? Did your mother ever mention that? Why does it matter? People grow apart. Boyd studied his daughter. Has Trevor been asking about my business? About whether I might sell? Amber's slight hesitation told him everything. He just mentioned that if you were serious about selling, he knows investors who might be interested. I bet he does, Boyd said softly. Tell Trevor I'm seriously considering all offers. In fact, I'm having an estate sale next month. Everything must go. After Amber left, Boyd called Trish. They took the bait. Time for phase 2. The estate sale was meticulously planned. Boyd sold furniture and art from his storage units, but kept all significant assets intact. He created the perfect illusion of a man liquidating his life before a major move. During the sale, he observed his family members circling like vultures. His mother examined his grandfather's pocket watch with tears in her eyes. Neil appraised Boyd's rare whiskey collection. Fiona photographed his antique desk with her phone. Denise arrived last, Trevor at her side. She walked through Boyd's possessions with a proprietary air, touching things, assessing their value. Trevor headed straight for Boyd's office, where financial documents were conspicuously displayed. Planning a big move? Trevor asked with manufactured casualness. Boyd nodded. Time for a fresh start. Away from painful memories. Your family is concerned, Trevor said, his hand coming to rest on a folder labeled Callahan Builders, Asset Valuation. Are they? Boyd asked mildly. They have an interesting way of showing it. That night, Boyd received a call from his mother. Boyd, darling, this impulsive decision to leave, it's not like you. People change, Mom. Betrayal changes them. Dorothy's voice hardened. You need to let go of this bitterness. We're having a family dinner next Saturday at my house. I expect you to be there. It's time we all moved forward. Who will be attending this reconciliation dinner? Boyd asked, already knowing the answer. Everyone. Neil and his wife, Fiona and Henry, the children, Denise and Trevor. It's time this family healed. Boyd allowed a long pause. I'll be there, Mom. You're right. It's time everyone faced the truth. After hanging up, Boyd looked at the elaborate model on his dining table, a perfect replica of his mother's house with detailed annotations. Beside it sat architectural plans for extensive modifications he'd been making to the mansion next door. Phase 3 begins Saturday, he told Vince, who was uploading the latest surveillance photos. Is everything in place? Vince nodded grimly. Everything. But Boyd, once you do this, there's no going back. Your family will never forgive you. Boyd's smile was cold. That's the idea. They think they've seen my worst. They haven't seen anything yet. Chapter 5, The Web Titans. The week before the family dinner, Boyd accelerated his plans. The mansion adjacent to his mother's estate underwent rapid transformation. Construction crews worked around the clock, supervised by Boyd's most trusted foreman, Miguel Santos, who believed they were preparing for a surprise film shoot. The technical specifications are very precise, Mr. Callahan, Miguel noted, reviewing the unusual modifications to the century-old ballroom. These aren't standard renovations. It's a special project, Miguel. Everything needs to be exactly as designed. Boyd supervised the installation of state-of-the-art audiovisual equipment, one-way mirrors, and a sophisticated security system with remote locking capabilities. Meanwhile, Boyd cultivated his appearance of vulnerability. He met with a real estate agent at a popular lunch spot where he knew Neil's colleagues would see them. He visited his doctor complaining of chest pains, ensuring the information would filter back to his mother through her bridge partner, who worked as a nurse. He even called Liam, sounding distracted and emotional, hinting at major life changes. Each calculated move strengthened his family's belief that Boyd was unraveling. The more they underestimated him, the more effective his revenge would be. 3 days before the dinner, Boyd invited Trevor to meet at an upscale bar downtown. Trevor arrived looking confident in his tailored suit, his handshake firm. "Boyd, good to see you," he said with practiced sincerity. "I was surprised to get your call." Boyd gestured to the bartender for 2 whiskeys. "I figured it was time we talked man to man. You're practically family now." Trevor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I appreciate that. Denise and I never wanted bad blood." "Of course not," Boyd agreed, sliding a folder across the bar. "That's why I wanted to discuss this with you first. I'm considering your investment group's interest in Callahan Builders." Trevor couldn't hide his surprise or his greed. He opened the folder to find financial statements showing Callahan Builders' holdings, deliberately inflated by Boyd's accounting team. "These numbers are impressive," Trevor said, studying the documents. "I wasn't aware the company had expanded into commercial properties in Cambridge." "Recent acquisitions," Boyd lied smoothly. "I'd like to keep this conversation between us for now. Family emotions run high around the business." Trevor nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. Discretion is paramount in these matters." They spent an hour discussing details, with Boyd feeding Trevor carefully crafted misinformation about his company's assets. As they parted, Boyd mentioned casually, "I'm looking forward to Mom's dinner on Saturday. It'll be good to clear the air." "Denise is anxious about it," Trevor admitted. "She's afraid you might make things uncomfortable." Boyd clapped him on the shoulder. "Ancient history. I'm focused on the future now. In fact, I'm bringing a surprise announcement to dinner." The bait was set. As Boyd predicted, Trevor immediately called Denise from the bar. Through Vince's surveillance, Boyd listened to their conversation. "He's selling the business," Trevor told Denise excitedly. "The valuation is much higher than we thought. And get this, he's making some kind of announcement at Dorothy's dinner." "What kind of announcement?" Denise sounded suspicious. "He didn't say, but he seems different. Subdued. Like he's given up fighting." "Boyd doesn't give up," Denise said. "He's planning something." "You're paranoid," Trevor dismissed her. "He's a broken man selling his assets before running away. This is our opportunity." Boyd smiled as the recording ended. Denise still knew him better than the others. She was right to be suspicious, but even she couldn't imagine what he had planned. The day before the dinner, Boyd met with Trish to finalize the legal aspects of his revenge. "These documents are legally binding," Trish warned, sliding the heavy folder across her desk. "Once executed, the financial consequences for your family will be severe." "They made their choices," Boyd said, signing each page without hesitation. "Now they'll live with the results." "And your children?" Trish asked softly. "Liam and Amber are innocent in this." Boyd paused, pen hovering over the final document. "No one is innocent. They chose sides. Even my children believed Denise's lies." Saturday morning dawned clear and cold. Boyd dressed meticulously in a charcoal suit tailored to perfection. In his breast pocket, he carried a small remote control custom designed by Vince's technical team. He arrived at his mother's estate 30 minutes early. Dorothy answered the door herself, surprise evident on her face. "Boyd, you're early. I thought we could talk privately before everyone arrives," he said, kissing her cheek. The familiar scent of her perfume momentarily weakened his resolve. This was his mother, who had bandaged his scraped knees and celebrated his successes. But she had also betrayed him for a con man's smooth promises. In the elegant living room, Boyd accepted a glass of sherry. "Beautiful as always, Mom. You've always had impeccable taste." Dorothy studied him warily. "You seem different today." "I've made peace with certain realities," Boyd said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Life is too short for bitterness." Relief softened her features. "I'm so glad to hear that." This feud has been tearing our family apart. Yes, Boyd agreed. Family is everything. That's actually why I wanted to speak with you first. I've made some decisions about my future, about the business. Dorothy leaned forward eagerly. Trevor mentioned you might be selling. Is that true? The casual mention of Trevor's name in relation to his business confirmed everything. Boyd smiled thinly. I've been exploring options. Actually, I've purchased a property nearby. Right next door, in fact. The old Harrington estate. Dorothy looked startled. But it's a tear down. Not anymore, Boyd said enigmatically. I've made some improvements. In fact, I was hoping to host dinner there tonight. A fresh start in a neutral location. I've had it catered. Dorothy hesitated. Everyone is expecting dinner here. It would mean a lot to me, Mom, Boyd said, injecting vulnerability into his voice. A chance to show everyone I'm moving forward positively. After a moment's consideration, Dorothy nodded. All right. I suppose a change of venue might help create a new atmosphere. As the family arrived, Dorothy explained the change of plans. Neil and Fiona exchanged suspicious glances but agreed to follow in their cars. Denise arrived with Trevor, her expression tense despite her elegant appearance. Liam and Amber came separately, both looking uncomfortable. Boyd led the procession to the mansion next door, where uniformed staff greeted them at the imposing entrance. The interior had been transformed from a derelict shell into a showcase of opulence, with crystal chandeliers illuminating marble floors and museum-quality art adorning the walls. My God, Boyd, Neil exclaimed, looking around the grand foyer. You did all this in a month? Money works wonders, Boyd replied smoothly. And I had excellent motivation. He guided them to the ballroom, where a long table was set with fine china and crystal. Place cards positioned each family member exactly where Boyd wanted them. As they took their seats, Boyd remained standing. Before we begin dinner, I'd like to propose a toast, he said, raising his champagne flute. To family and to truth. As his family raised their glasses uncertainly, Boyd pressed the remote in his pocket. Throughout the mansion, electronic locks engaged with soft clicks. Security shutters silently descended over windows. The elaborate trap was set. What was that sound? Fiona asked, looking around nervously. Boyd smiled. That, dear sister, was the sound of accountability. Chapter 6. The Unmasking. A heavy silence fell over the ornate ballroom as Boyd placed his champagne flute deliberately on the table. The crystal made a delicate ringing sound that echoed in the sudden quiet. What do you mean accountability? Neil demanded, half rising from his chair. Boyd gestured for everyone to remain seated. Please, enjoy your appetizers. We have a long evening ahead of us. With practiced calm, he pressed another button on his remote. The lights dimmed slightly, and a projector descended from the ceiling. On the wall behind Boyd, a family photo appeared, the same Christmas picture that had centered his war room. 2 years ago, Boyd began, his voice measured and calm. We were a family. Imperfect, perhaps, but united. Tonight, I want to explore what changed. Denise shifted uncomfortably. Boyd, if this is some kind of ambush. Patience, Denise, Boyd cut her off. Your role in this story will become clear soon enough. The image changed to a series of financial documents. Let's begin with some numbers. Neil, you took out a second mortgage on your house for $300,000. Fiona, you withdrew $150,000 from your retirement account. Mom, you changed your will and made Trevor co-trustee of your living trust. The family exchanged alarmed glances. How did you get this information? Neil demanded. That's your concern? Not that you mortgaged your children's future to invest in a failing business. Boyd asked coolly. Porter Designs is not failing. Denise protested. Boyd clicked to the next slide, showing balance sheets. Current debt, $427,000. Revenue in the past quarter, $42,000. At this burn rate, you'll be bankrupt within 6 months. Trevor stood up abruptly. This is private business information. You have no right. Sit down, Trevor. Or should I call you by your real name? Trevor Wilson. The color drained from Trevor's face. Behind him, a series of newspaper clippings appeared on the screen, detailing investment schemes in Florida circa 2006. You changed your name 15 years ago after several of your clients filed complaints with the SEC, Boyd continued. No charges were filed, but you left town under a cloud of suspicion. New name, new city, same old scams. Dorothy turned to Trevor, shock evident on her face. Is this true? Trevor forced a laugh. These are ancient history, taken out of context. Boyd is manipulating the facts because he can't accept that Denise chose me. Did she? Boyd asked quietly. He clicked to another screen showing social media messages between Trevor and Denise dated 4 years earlier. Your affair didn't begin after our marriage was struggling. It caused our marriage to struggle. Gasps filled the room. Amber looked at her mother with dawning horror. Mom? 4 years ago? I was 12. Denise's composure cracked. It wasn't like that. We were just friends then. Boyd clicked to more messages, these more explicit. Friends who discussed how to maximize what you could get in a divorce settlement? Friends who joked about how clueless I was. Liam stood up, his face flushed with anger. Stop it. Just stop this. Sit down, son, Boyd said, his voice softening slightly. I know this is painful, but it's necessary. You all chose sides without knowing the truth. Now you will. The presentation continued relentlessly. Boyd revealed how Trevor had been systematically emptying the Porter Designs business account into his personal offshore holdings. He showed documentation of how Trevor had advised Dorothy to invest in high-risk ventures that generated substantial commissions for himself while depleting her savings. With each revelation, the family's expressions transformed from disbelief to horror to shame. Trevor's attempts to defend himself grew increasingly desperate. Denise sat in stunned silence, mascara tracking down her cheeks. Why are you doing this? Fiona finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Boyd looked at his sister with cold eyes. You asked me to sit at a Thanksgiving table with the people who destroyed my life, and to keep my mouth shut like a good boy. You chose Denise and her con man over your own brother. You all did. He turned to his mother. You were changing your will to leave my grandfather's lake house to the woman who betrayed me. The house where I spent every childhood summer. The house I renovated with my own hands. Dorothy's face crumpled. I didn't know about Trevor's past. I thought I was helping keep the family together. By excluding me? Boyd asked sharply. By making me the villain in a story written by liars? Neil stood up, his face red with anger. All right, you've made your point. We were misled. We made mistakes. Now unlock the doors and let us leave. Boyd smiled coldly. Oh, we're not done yet. We haven't gotten to the consequences. He clicked to a new slide showing a complex web of legal documents. While you were all busy betraying me, I was busy too. Neil, remember when you asked me to add you as a signatory to the Callahan Family Trust last year? You signed several documents. Neil's expression shifted from confusion to dread. What did you do? You transferred your shares in Neil Callahan Architects to a holding company I control. Effectively, I now own 51% of your firm. Neil staggered backwards. That's not possible. That's fraud. No, it's not, Boyd countered. Trish assures me every document is legally binding. You just didn't read the fine print. He turned to Fiona. And you, sister dear, remember that real estate partnership we formed to buy rental properties in Somerville? You gave me power of attorney when you went to Europe last spring. I used it to restructure the partnership. You now own just 5%. Fiona's face went ashen. Those properties were my retirement plan. You should have thought of that before you sided with Denise. Boyd replied without sympathy. As for you, mother. Dorothy raised a trembling hand. Please, Boyd. Enough. The Brookline house, the Cape Cod cottage, and yes, the New Hampshire lake house. All transferred into an irrevocable trust. I'm the trustee. You retain lifetime use rights, but you cannot sell them or leave them to anyone without my approval. A stunned silence fell over the room. Liam looked at his father with a mixture of horror and awe. Dad, you've destroyed everyone. Not destroyed, son. Educated. Boyd finally sat down at the head of the table. Now, shall we have dinner? The staff has prepared an excellent meal. Trevor suddenly lunged across the table, grabbing Boyd by the lapels. You smug bastard. You think you've won? I'll sue you into oblivion. Boyd didn't flinch. With what money, Trevor? Your accounts were frozen this morning. The FBI is currently examining the trail of funds you've been siphoning from my family. Securities fraud carries substantial penalties. As if on cue, the ballroom doors opened. 2 men in suits entered, showing badges. Trevor Wilson? We'd like to ask you some questions about Porter Designs' financial activities. The timing was perfect. Boyd had arranged for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit to arrive precisely at this moment. based on evidence Vince had submitted anonymously weeks earlier. As Trevor was escorted out, Denise turned to Boyd with tear-streaked fury. "You planned all of this. You set up Trevor to take the fall." "Trevor set himself up by stealing from a business funded by my family," Boyd corrected her. "I simply made sure his crimes were discovered." He looked around the table at his shattered family. "You all made choices. You chose Denise's manipulative tears over loyalty to blood. You chose a con man's smooth promises over a lifetime of trust. Now you'll live with the consequences." Liam stood up, his young face contorted with anguish. "Dad, please. Whatever they did, they're still family. We can fix this." Boyd studied his son, the only person in the room for whom he still felt a flicker of affection. "Some betrayals can't be fixed, Liam. Some lessons must be learned the hard way." He pressed his remote again, and the locks throughout the mansion disengaged with a soft click. "You're all free to go. The legal documents outlining your new financial realities have been sent to your respective email addresses. I suggest you consult with attorneys, though not with Trish, as she represents me." As his stunned family filed out, Dorothy paused beside Boyd. Her hand trembled as she reached for his face. "I failed you as a mother. I see that now." For a moment, Boyd felt his resolve waver. Then he remembered Thanksgiving without him, his family laughing with his wife and her lover while he sat alone. "Yes," he said simply. "You did." Left alone in the ornate ballroom, Boyd finally allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 3 was complete. His betrayers had been exposed and punished. But his revenge wasn't finished yet. There was still the matter of ensuring none of them could ever recover from this night. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Vince, execute the final protocol." Across the city, digital switches flipped, releasing carefully curated information packets to journalists, business associates, and social media accounts. By morning, the Callahan family's public humiliation would be complete. Chapter 7: Ashes of the Past. The Sunday morning after the fateful dinner, Boston's social circles buzzed with rumors about the Callahan family. By Monday, those rumors had crystallized into news stories. The Boston Globe's business section ran a feature on Trevor Wilson's checkered financial past and current FBI investigation. Social media overflowed with clips from Boyd's meticulously recorded dinner presentation, leaked strategically to maximize damage. Boyd watched it all unfold from his downtown apartment, monitoring multiple screens with clinical detachment. Vince handed him a cup of coffee as they reviewed the fallout. "Trevor's being held without bail," Vince reported. "The FBI found evidence of tax evasion on top of the securities fraud. He's looking at serious time." Boyd nodded, scanning news reports. "And Denise?" "Holed up at her sister's place in Wellesley. Porter Design's landlord has already padlocked their office for non-payment. Her credit cards are being declined." A small, cold smile touched Boyd's lips. "My mother? Dorothy hasn't left her house since Saturday. Her housekeeper says she's not taking calls or visitors." Boyd turned to another screen showing surveillance footage of Neil arguing with partners outside his architectural firm. "And my dear brother?" "His partners called an emergency meeting when they learned you now control his shares. They're debating whether to buy him out or force him out." The systematic destruction of his family's security continued exactly as Boyd had planned. Each betrayal had been meticulously balanced with an appropriate punishment. Financial ruin for those who had financed his wife's affair. Public humiliation for those who had humiliated him at Thanksgiving. His phone rang, Liam for the 5th time that morning. Boyd finally answered. "Dad." Liam's voice sounded raw, as if he'd been crying. "Everything's falling apart. Mom's a mess. Grandma won't get out of bed. Uncle Neil might lose his firm. You have to help us fix this." "Why would I do that?" Boyd asked calmly. "Because they're family." Liam cried. "Whatever they did, this punishment is too extreme." "Is it?" "They watched me lose everything. My wife, my home, my position in the family. They not only took Denise's side, but financed her new life with her lover. They made me an outcast and called it moving forward. Now they know how it feels." Liam's voice dropped to a whisper. "What about Amber and me? We're collateral damage in your revenge." For the first time, Boyd felt a twinge of doubt. His children had been manipulated by Denise, true, but they were young and easily influenced. Had he been too harsh? The moment of weakness passed as he remembered Amber's social media posts with Trevor, coolest almost stepdad, and Liam's silence during family gatherings where Boyd was excluded. You both made choices too, Boyd said firmly. Actions have consequences, son. That's the lesson here. So what happens now? Liam asked, his voice hollow. Now you all live with the new reality. Your mother can find a job like anyone else. Neil and Fiona can deal with their financial losses. And you and Amber can decide what kind of relationship you want with me going forward, if any. After hanging up, Boyd stared at the city skyline. The revenge he'd plotted for months was unfolding perfectly, yet the satisfaction felt hollow. He'd expected triumph, vindication. Instead, he felt nothing. The doorbell rang. Boyd checked the security monitor to see Amber standing in the hallway, her face tear-stained. For a moment, he considered not answering. Then, reluctantly, he buzzed her in. Amber burst through the door, her teenage composure completely shattered. How could you? She demanded, her voice breaking. Grandma is devastated. She might lose her house. She won't lose her house, Boyd corrected calmly. I specifically structured the trust to ensure she has lifetime use rights. She simply can't sell it or leave it to anyone without my permission. That's supposed to make it better? Amber's voice rose hysterically. Mom's bank accounts are frozen. We don't even have grocery money. Boyd walked to his safe, opened it, and removed an envelope containing cash. $5,000. Enough for immediate needs. Your mother can contact me about a monthly stipend until she finds employment. Amber stared at the envelope, then knocked it from his hand, sending bills fluttering to the floor. We don't want your blood money. We want our family back. The family betrayed me, Boyd said flatly. They chose sides without knowing the truth, and now they're facing the consequences. So punish Mom and Trevor. Punish Uncle Neil and Aunt Fiona if you have to. But Grandma? She's 76 years old. This could kill her. Boyd's face remained impassive, though something twisted painfully in his chest. She'll survive. Callahans are resilient. Amber looked at her father with genuine bewilderment. I don't even know who you are anymore. The dad I knew wouldn't destroy his entire family for revenge. The father you knew died the day his family sided with his cheating wife, Boyd replied coldly. This is who I am now. Take the money or don't. Your choice. After Amber left, Boyd poured himself a glass of scotch and returned to the window. The city continued its rhythms below, indifferent to the Callahan family drama. For the first time, doubts crept into Boyd's mind. Had he gone too far? The look in Amber's eyes haunted him, not anger or even fear, but disappointment, as if she'd lost all respect for the man she once adored. Boyd pushed the thought away. Weakness had cost him everything once before. He wouldn't make that mistake again. The plan would continue. The next phase began that evening with a carefully orchestrated encounter at the exclusive Suffolk Club. Boyd arranged to be seated near Maxwell Porter, Denise's older brother, who had flown in from Chicago to help his sister. Boyd, Max acknowledged stiffly when they inevitably crossed paths at the bar. At 60, Max was still imposing, a successful surgeon with the same blonde good looks as his sister. Max, Boyd returned coolly. In town for damage control? Max's jaw tightened. You've made your point, Boyd. Denise made a mistake. Trevor manipulated everyone. But destroying the entire family? That's monstrous. Boyd sipped his drink. Your sister didn't just have an affair, Max. She and Trevor systematically isolated me from my family, painted me as unstable and neglectful, then used my family's money to finance their new life together. That's not a mistake. It's a calculated betrayal. So what now? Max demanded. Denise is practically destitute. Your children are traumatized. Is this justice to you? Justice is simply the beginning, Boyd replied. I've arranged for Trish to send you the terms for Denise's ongoing financial support. She'll receive a monthly stipend dependent on certain conditions. What conditions? Max asked suspiciously. First, she leaves Boston permanently. Second, she makes no attempts to contact my mother or siblings. Third, she signs over her remaining interest in the Brookline house to me. Max's face reddened. You're exiling her from her home? Her family. She destroyed my home and turned my family against me. Boyd countered without emotion. Consider this generous. She could be facing accessory charges for Trevor's financial crimes. The veiled threat hung between them. Both men knew Boyd had the evidence to potentially implicate Denise in Trevor's schemes if he chose to share it with the FBI. Max drained his drink. I'll convey your terms. But understand this, Boyd. You've won the battle, but at what cost? When you're old and alone, Remember, this was your choice. Boyd watched him leave, unmoved by the warning. Loneliness was preferable to betrayal. He'd already lived through the worst kind of abandonment. Nothing could hurt him now. Later that night, Boyd received an unexpected call from his mother. Boyd. Dorothy's voice sounded feeble, aged beyond her years. I need to see you. I'm busy, Mom, he replied coldly. Please. I'm not asking for forgiveness or even understanding. But there are things I need to say to you face to face. Things you deserve to hear. Against his better judgment, Boyd agreed to visit her the following morning. Dorothy's elegant Brookline home, once the center of Callahan family gatherings, felt like a mausoleum. The curtains were drawn, leaving the rooms in shadow. Dorothy herself looked diminished, her usual perfect appearance replaced by a wrinkled blouse and uncombed hair. You look terrible, Boyd observed bluntly. I haven't been sleeping, she admitted, leading him to the living room. Guilt is an effective insomnia treatment. They sat across from each other awkwardly. Boyd noticed her hands trembling. I spoke with Maxine Duval yesterday, Dorothy said finally. Boyd raised an eyebrow. Maxine had been Denise's divorce attorney. Why? I wanted legal advice about my situation. She told me something interesting. Dorothy met Boyd's eyes directly. She said Denise originally wanted a fair settlement. Equal assets, shared custody. It was Trevor who pushed her to go for maximum damage. Boyd scoffed. And you believe that? Denise could have chosen differently at any point. Yes, she could have. We all could have. Dorothy's voice strengthened. I'm not excusing what any of us did, Boyd. I'm trying to understand how I failed so completely as a mother. By believing Denise's lies. By welcoming her lover into our family. By changing your will to benefit the woman who destroyed your son's marriage. Dorothy nodded, accepting each accusation. Yes, all of that. But my greatest failure was forgetting who you are, who you've always been. You built your business from nothing. You supported this family through every crisis. You renovated this house when we couldn't afford repairs. Tears slipped down her lined cheeks. How did I forget all that for a smooth-talking financial advisor who appeared out of nowhere? What kind of mother betrays her own son? The raw pain in her voice pierced Boyd's carefully constructed armor. For a moment, he saw not his betrayer but his mother, the woman who had nursed him through childhood illnesses, who had believed in him when no one else did. The moment passed. Boyd hardened his heart against her tears. It doesn't matter anymore. What's done is done. Will you ever forgive me? Dorothy asked quietly. Boyd stood to leave. No, Mom. I won't. Trust, once broken, cannot be repaired. You chose Denise over me. Now you'll have neither of us. As he walked to the door, Dorothy called after him. I've always been proud of you, Boyd. Even now, when you're punishing us all, I recognize your brilliance. You are exactly like your father, unstoppable when wronged. Boyd paused but didn't turn around. His father had been dead for 20 years, but the comparison struck home. Malcolm Callahan had been a hard man, demanding perfection and unforgiving of betrayal. Boyd had spent his life trying not to become his father, yet here he was, systematically destroying his family for vengeance. For one brief moment, doubt clouded his resolve. Then he remembered the Thanksgiving dinner without him. The family gathered around Trevor and Denise while he sat alone in his empty apartment. Goodbye, Mother, he said coldly, and closed the door behind him. Chapter 8. Scorched Earth. 3 weeks after the Revelation dinner, Boyd sat in Trish's office reviewing documents. The fallout from his revenge had exceeded even his expectations. Trevor remained in federal custody, denied bail due to flight risk. Neil's architectural firm had bought out his shares at a fraction of their value to remove him from the partnership. Fiona had been forced to list her Beacon Hill townhouse to cover investment losses. Denise's lawyer has accepted your terms, Trish informed him, sliding a signed agreement across her desk. Monthly stipend in exchange for relocation and non-contact with your family members. Boyd nodded. Where is she moving? Chicago, near her brother. The agreement specifies she must remain at least 500 miles from Boston. And the Brookline house. She signed over her interest. It's yours entirely now. Boyd felt nothing as he reviewed the documents. No triumph, no satisfaction, not even anger anymore. Just emptiness. What about the children? Trish asked carefully. What about them? Liam is in his final year of high school. Amber is 16. Their lives have been completely upended. Have you spoken to them? Boyd's jaw tightened. Liam texts occasionally. Amber hasn't contacted me since our last confrontation. Trish leaned forward, her professional detachment giving way to genuine concern. Boyd, I've been your attorney and friend for 20 years. I've supported your legal right to reclaim what was taken from you. But the children are innocent victims here. No one is innocent, Boyd replied flatly. They chose sides too. They're teenagers who believe their mother. That's hardly a capital offense. Boyd gathered the documents into his briefcase. Are we finished here? Trish sighed. Legally, yes. But Boyd, when your revenge is complete and everyone who hurt you has been punished, what then? What will you have left? The question followed Boyd as he drove to his newest acquisition, the Brookline house where he had raised his family. Standing in the empty foyer, memories assaulted him from every corner. Liam taking his first steps across the polished hardwood floor. Amber sliding down the banister despite repeated warnings. Denise decorating the massive Christmas tree that always stood in the front window. Boyd moved through the rooms methodically, noting repairs needed and changes he planned to make. The master bedroom, where Denise had betrayed him with Trevor, would be gutted completely. His children's rooms would be converted to guest suites. Every trace of the family that had occupied this space would be erased. In Amber's room, abandoned stuffed animals still lined the window seat. A science fair trophy collected dust on the bookshelf. On her bulletin board, family photos remained pinned haphazardly. Boyd teaching Amber to ride a bike. The four of them on a ski trip to Vermont. Boyd carrying Amber on his shoulders at a Red Sox game. For the first time since executing his revenge, Boyd felt something crack in his carefully constructed emotional armor. These weren't just mementos of his failed marriage, but evidence of his children's lives. Lives now damaged by his quest for vengeance. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Vince. Boyd, we have a situation. Neil attempted suicide last night. The world seemed to freeze around Boyd. What? Is he? He'll survive. Pills and alcohol. His wife found him in time. He left a note saying he couldn't face the humiliation of financial ruin and professional disgrace. Boyd sat heavily on Amber's bed, the stuffed animals witnessing his shock. Where is he now? Boston General. Psychiatric hold. After hanging up, Boyd remained motionless, staring at a family photo on Amber's nightstand. Neil and Boyd as children, arms slung around each other's shoulders, grinning widely after catching their first fish at the lake house. Brothers, inseparable once. His phone rang again. Liam. Dad. His son's voice was raw with emotion. Did you hear about Uncle Neil? Just now. This has to stop, Liam pleaded. Uncle Neil nearly died. Grandma's health is deteriorating. Mom's moving to Chicago. Our family is being torn apart. The family was torn apart when everyone sided with Denise. Boyd responded automatically, though the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. So what's your endgame here? Liam demanded, his voice cracking. When will you have punished everyone enough? When Uncle Neil succeeds at killing himself? When Grandma dies of a broken heart? Will that finally satisfy your revenge? The question hit Boyd like a physical blow. What was his endgame? He'd wanted his betrayers to suffer as he had suffered. He'd succeeded beyond his expectations. Yet the emptiness remained, a void where satisfaction should be. I don't know, Boyd admitted, the first moment of uncertainty in his meticulously executed plan. Well, figure it out, Liam said bitterly. Because while you're destroying everyone who hurt you, you're destroying yourself too. The father I knew would never have let vengeance consume him like this. After hanging up, Boyd wandered through the empty house that had once been filled with laughter and life. His revenge had been perfect, calculated, comprehensive, and utterly devastating. He had reclaimed his financial assets, punished the betrayers, and established his dominance over those who had wronged him. Yet standing in the hollowed-out shell of his former home, Boyd faced an uncomfortable truth. He had won every battle but lost something essential in the process. The emptiness inside him wouldn't be filled by his enemy's suffering. That night, Boyd drove to Boston General. Neil was in a private room under observation, his wife Susan asleep in a chair beside him. Boyd stood in the doorway, studying his brother's pale face against the stark white sheets. Neil opened his eyes, seeming unsurprised to see Boyd. Come to gloat, he asked, his voice raspy. No, Boyd said quietly. Then why are you here? Boyd entered the room slowly. I don't know. Neil's bitter laugh triggered a coughing fit. The great Boyd Callahan doesn't know something? Alert the media. I never wanted this, Boyd said, gesturing to the hospital room. What did you want? To destroy everything I built? To humiliate me professionally? To drive me to suicide? Congratulations, you nearly got the trifecta. Boyd sat in the chair opposite Susan. I wanted you to understand what it felt like to lose everything. To be betrayed by people you trusted. Neil studied his brother's face. And did it work? Do you feel better now that I've lost my partnership, my reputation, and nearly my life? No, Boyd admitted. I feel nothing. Nothing? After orchestrating the perfect revenge. Neil shook his head slowly. That's the thing about vengeance, Boyd. It promises satisfaction, but delivers emptiness. Dad taught us that, remember? Boyd did remember. After a business partner had cheated him, Malcolm Callahan had systematically destroyed the man's career and reputation. But the victory had changed their father, leaving him bitter and isolated in his final years. I'm not going to apologize for believing Denise, Neil continued. She was family for 26 years. She was convincing, and you weren't there to defend yourself. You shut everyone out. Because you all turned against me. We didn't understand what was happening, Neil countered weakly. We made a mistake, Boyd. A terrible mistake. But your punishment doesn't fit the crime. Boyd stood abruptly. I should go. Wait. Neil called as Boyd reached the door. What happens now? Do we all just continue suffering until you decide we've paid enough? Is there an endpoint to this revenge? Boyd paused, genuinely uncertain. The carefully plotted revenge had consumed him for months, but he'd never considered what would come after. Was there redemption after such complete destruction? Could anything be salvaged from the ashes of his family? I don't know, he said finally, and left his brother to the beeping monitors and antiseptic smell of near death. Chapter 9. No quarter given. 1 month after Neil's suicide attempt, Boyd stood in the newly renovated living room of the Brookline house. The space had been completely transformed, walls removed to create an open-concept layout, dark hardwood floors replaced with light bamboo, heavy drapes exchanged for minimalist blinds. No trace remained of the family that had once lived here. Boyd surveyed his work with critical eyes. The renovation had been therapeutic, a physical manifestation of his emotional purge. Each demolished wall represented a betrayal excised. Each new fixture symbolized the construction of his post-family life. His phone buzzed with a text from Trish. Meeting set with Dorothy's attorney tomorrow at 10. Are you sure about this? Boyd replied, entirely sure. The final phase of his revenge was nearly complete. Dorothy had requested changes to the irrevocable trust controlling her properties, hoping to ensure Liam and Amber would eventually inherit the family lake house. Boyd had let her believe he might be softening, might be willing to compromise. Tomorrow, he would dash those hopes completely. His phone rang. Amber. Boyd hesitated before answering. Their last conversation had ended with his daughter storming out, declaring she never wanted to see him again. Hello, Amber. Dad. Her voice sounded small, lacking its usual teenage defiance. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. In person. Please. It's important. Against his better judgment, Boyd agreed to meet her at a cafe near her school. When he arrived, Amber was already seated in a corner booth, looking smaller and younger than her 16 years. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of makeup. You wanted to talk, Boyd said after ordering coffee. Amber took a deep breath. I'm not going to Chicago with Mom. This was unexpected. Where will you live? I want to live with you, Amber said, meeting his eyes directly. In the Brookline house. My home. Boyd studied his daughter carefully, looking for signs of manipulation or ulterior motive. Why the sudden change? Last time we spoke, you never wanted to see me again. Amber's composure cracked slightly. Because I was angry and scared. You'd just destroyed our entire family structure. Mom was hysterical, Grandma was devastated, Uncle Neil. She trailed off, unable to mention her uncle's suicide attempt. And now? Boyd pressed. Now I understand more, Amber said quietly. Mom told me everything. About how the affair started years earlier than she admitted. About how she and Trevor planned to get as much money as possible in the divorce. About how they manipulated everyone against you. Boyd felt a cold satisfaction hearing Denise had finally admitted the truth, though he was surprised she'd confessed to Amber. She didn't want to tell me. Amber continued, reading his expression. I found texts on her phone while helping her pack. When I confronted her, she broke down. She said she'd made terrible mistakes and ruined everyone's lives. And that made you decide to live with me instead? Boyd asked skeptically. Amber's eyes filled with tears. I decided because despite everything you've done, you're the only one who's been honest. Mom lied. Grandma lied. Everyone lied or hid things or manipulated the truth. You've been brutal, but never dishonest. The assessment startled Boyd. He'd expected many reactions from his children: fear, anger, resentment, but not this clear-eyed evaluation of his character. The house is completely different now, he warned. I've renovated everything. Your room is gone. I know, Liam told me. Amber shrugged. It doesn't matter. It's still my home. Our home. For the first time in months, Boyd felt something other than cold detachment or simmering rage. A small, fragile connection to the daughter he'd helped raise for 16 years. It wasn't forgiveness. Amber had made that clear, but perhaps understanding. I'll think about it, he said finally. Later that evening, Boyd met Vince at a discreet bar downtown to discuss the final phase of his revenge plan. Neil's being released from the psychiatric facility tomorrow, Vince reported. Fiona's townhouse sold, at a significant loss. And Dorothy has appointments with 3 different attorneys, all specialists in trusts and estates. Boyd nodded, processing the information. And Denise? Movers are coming next week. She's donated most of the furniture from the old house. According to her brother's credit card, she's booked a one-way ticket to Chicago for next Thursday. Everything was proceeding exactly as Boyd had planned. His betrayers had been punished. His assets had been reclaimed. His dominance had been established. So why did victory taste like ashes? There's one more thing, Vince said, sliding a folder across the table. Liam applied to Boston College's business program. Early decision. Boyd opened the folder to find his son's application essay. The title page read, The Legacy of Callahan Builders. Why I Want to Follow My Father's Footsteps. Where did you get this? Boyd asked, his voice suddenly hoarse. I have sources in the admissions office, Vince replied. Read it. The kid worships you, Boyd. Despite everything. That night, alone in his downtown apartment, Boyd read Liam's essay 3 times. His son wrote eloquently about growing up watching his father build a construction empire from scratch, about learning the value of hard work and integrity, about dreaming of one day taking over the family business. My father taught me that a man's word is his bond, Liam had written. That quality work speaks for itself. That family is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Boyd closed the folder, his hands trembling slightly. The essay had been written before the revenge, before the systematic destruction of their family. Would Liam write the same words now? The next morning, Boyd arrived at Trish's office for the meeting with Dorothy's attorney. His mother sat rigidly in a visitor's chair, her appearance once again impeccable, though her face showed new lines of strain. Boyd, she acknowledged tersely. Mother. Trish and Dorothy's attorney, a silver-haired man named Richard Pembroke, exchanged uncomfortable glances. Shall we begin? Trish suggested. Mrs. Callahan has requested modifications to the irrevocable trust controlling her properties. Pembroke cleared his throat. My client is concerned about the future inheritance of her grandchildren. While she accepts the terms regarding her lifetime use of the properties, she would like to ensure that upon her death, the lake house specifically passes to Liam and Amber. Boyd listened impassively. This was the moment he'd planned for, the final twist of the knife. Dorothy had cherished the lake house for decades. Knowing it would eventually pass to her grandchildren was her only consolation in the current arrangement. I've considered the request, Boyd said formally. My answer is no. The trust will remain exactly as written. Upon Dorothy's death, all properties will revert to my complete control, to be disposed of as I see fit. Dorothy closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the blow. So this is your final revenge. Taking away my peace of mind about the children's inheritance. You were going to leave the lake house to Denise, Boyd reminded her coldly. You chose her over me. Actions have consequences. Yes, they do, Dorothy agreed, suddenly looking directly into Boyd's eyes. Your father learned that too late. His revenge consumed him until there was nothing left but bitterness. In his final days, he regretted everything. I won the battle but lost my soul, he told me. Is that what you want, Boyd? To become him? The comparison struck deep. Boyd had spent his life determined not to repeat his father's mistakes. The emotional distance, the obsession with winning at all costs. Yet here he was, systematically destroying his family relationships in pursuit of perfect vengeance. For a moment, doubt crept in. Then Boyd hardened his resolve. The trust remains as is. This meeting is over. As Dorothy gathered her purse to leave, she placed an envelope on the table. Liam asked me to give you this. Whatever you think of me, whatever punishment you still plan to inflict, remember that your children deserve better than to inherit this cycle of bitterness. After everyone left, Boyd opened the envelope to find a formal invitation. Boston College Department of Business Administration invites you to attend a special reception honoring early decision applicants and their families December 15th at 7 p.m. Liam had handwritten at the bottom, "I'd really like you to be there, Dad. Whatever's happened between you and everyone else, I'm still your son. I still want to follow in your footsteps." Boyd sat alone in Trish's conference room, the invitation in one hand, Dorothy's warning about his father echoing in his mind. The perfect revenge he'd constructed was complete. His betrayers had been punished. His assets had been reclaimed. His dominance had been established. Yet the victory felt hollow. Sitting in the aftermath of destruction, Boyd faced an uncomfortable truth. He had become exactly what he'd most despised. His father in his final bitter years, isolated and feared rather than loved. 2 days later, Boyd arrived at the Boston College reception alone. The elegant hall was filled with prospective students and proud parents. Boyd spotted Liam immediately, standing tall in a new suit, talking animatedly with a professor. Liam noticed him and froze momentarily before crossing the room. "Dad, you came. You invited me," Boyd said simply. They stood awkwardly among the celebratory crowd. "Have you decided about Amber?" Liam finally asked. "She can move in next week," Boyd said. "I've started preparing a room for her." Relief flashed across Liam's face. "Thank you. She needs stability right now." Boyd looked around at the other families, parents beaming with pride, siblings teasing each other, the normal dynamics of functional families. The contrast with his own shattered family was stark. "Is Mom here?" he asked, scanning the crowd. Liam shook his head. "She thought it would be too awkward. She leaves for Chicago tomorrow." Boyd nodded, suppressing the surge of satisfaction at the news of Denise's departure. "And Grandma. She wanted to come, but..." Liam hesitated. "She's not doing well, Dad. The stress of everything. It's affecting her health. Uncle Neil is staying with her for now." The information should have pleased Boyd. More evidence his revenge was effective. Instead, he felt a strange emptiness, a growing realization that his victory had come at too high a cost. "I read your essay," Boyd said abruptly, "about following in my footsteps." Liam looked away. "I wrote that before everything." "Did you mean it?" "About wanting to join the business someday." "I did then," Liam admitted. "Now, I'm not sure. The father I wrote about believed in family above all else. The man you've become." He trailed off. The words hit Boyd with unexpected force. In pursuing revenge against those who had betrayed him, he had betrayed his own principles, the very values he'd instilled in his children. What if? Boyd began, then stopped, uncertain how to proceed. What if that man still exists? Buried deep, perhaps, but not entirely gone. Liam studied his father carefully. Does he? Because the man I've seen these past months is consumed by revenge. He's systematically destroyed everyone who hurt him, including his own mother. Is that really who you want to be remembered as? The question hung between them, uncomfortably direct. Before Boyd could respond, a dean called for everyone's attention to begin the formal program. "I should join my group," Liam said, turning away. "Liam," Boyd called after him, "I'm proud of you. Whatever happens with our family, never doubt that." His son nodded once before disappearing into the crowd, leaving Boyd alone with thoughts he'd been avoiding for months. The following Sunday, Boyd drove to his mother's Brookline estate. Dorothy answered the door herself, surprise evident on her face. "Boyd, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," he said simply. In her elegant living room, Boyd declined offers of tea or coffee. This wouldn't be a social visit. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began. "About Dad. About becoming him." Dorothy waited silently, her hands folded in her lap. "I won't change the trust," Boyd continued. "The properties remain under my control. But I've instructed Trish to add a codicil specifying that upon your death, the lake house passes to Liam and Amber in equal shares." Relief softened Dorothy's features. "Thank you, Boyd. I'm not doing it for you," he clarified coldly. I'm doing it for my children. They shouldn't lose their inheritance because of their grandmother's poor judgment. Dorothy accepted the barb without flinching. And what about Neil and Fiona? Will your vengeance against them continue as well? Neil's architectural firm will remain partially under my control. Fiona's real estate holdings similarly. I won't relinquish the leverage I've gained. So the revenge continues, Dorothy said softly. It's not revenge anymore, Boyd replied. It's protection. I won't allow them to betray me again. And me? What protection do you need from your aging mother? Boyd met her eyes directly. You chose Denise over me. You were changing your will to benefit the woman who destroyed my marriage. Trust, once broken, cannot be fully restored. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. So there will never be forgiveness. Never reconciliation. No, Boyd confirmed without emotion. You made your choice. This is the consequence. As he rose to leave, Dorothy asked one final question. If Liam or Amber betrayed you somehow, would you cut them off just as completely? Would you punish them as severely? The question caught Boyd off guard. Would he? Could he apply the same ruthless standard to his children? They're different, he said finally. They're my children. And I'm your mother, Dorothy replied simply. Yet here we are. The observation followed Boyd as he drove to meet Amber at the Brookline house. His daughter was waiting on the front steps with a single suitcase. Is that all you're bringing? He asked, helping with her bag. Most of my stuff is already packed for Chicago, Amber explained. Mom says I can ship it back once I'm settled. Boyd led her through the renovated house, watching her reaction to the dramatic changes. Amber said nothing as she took in the transformed spaces, the removal of all traces of their former family life. Your room is upstairs, Boyd told her. First door on the right. I kept it simple so you can decorate it however you want. Amber nodded silently, climbing the stairs to her new bedroom. The space Boyd had prepared was indeed simple. White walls, basic furniture, none of the personal touches that had filled her old room. It's fine, she said flatly. It's just a room. Boyd felt a flicker of regret for the first time. In his determination to erase the past, he'd eliminated the warmth that had once made this house a home. We can change anything you don't like, he offered. Amber sat on the edge of the bed. Why are you letting me live here, Dad? Really, you're my daughter. And Mom is Grandma's daughter. Uncle Neil is her son. That didn't stop you from destroying them. The parallel to Dorothy's question was unsettling. That's different. Is it? Amber challenged. Or is it only different because I haven't betrayed you yet? What happens when I eventually disappoint you, Dad? Will you disown me too? Boyd had no answer. The ruthless logic he'd applied to his family's betrayal couldn't withstand the simple question from his teenage daughter. That night, Boyd sat alone in his study while Amber slept upstairs. The house felt different with his daughter's presence, less like a monument to revenge and more like a reminder of what had been lost. His phone buzzed with a text from Liam. Amber settled in okay? Yes, Boyd replied. Room needs work, but she's here. Good. Mom left for Chicago today. No one saw her off. The information should have pleased Boyd. Denise departing alone, abandoned by the family she'd manipulated. Instead, he felt nothing but emptiness. Grandma asked about you, Liam continued. She's hoping you might call someday. Boyd didn't respond to that. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven. He'd made his choices, just as they had made theirs. In the months that followed, Boyd maintained his cold distance from his mother, brother, and sister. The financial structures he'd created remained in place, ensuring they would never again have the resources to hurt him. Trevor's trial for securities fraud proceeded, with Boyd providing detailed evidence to the prosecution. Denise remained in Chicago, receiving her monthly stipend in exchange for staying away from Boston and the Callahan family. Amber gradually settled into life with her father, though a careful distance remained between them. Liam visited regularly during his first semester at Boston College, slowly rebuilding his relationship with Boyd through shared interest in the construction business. The family Boyd had destroyed never recovered. The Thanksgiving table the following year held empty chairs where once his mother, brother, and sister had sat. Boyd hosted a small dinner for his children and a few business associates. No one mentioned the absent family members. After the guests left, Boyd stood at the window watching snow begin to fall on the darkened lawn. Amber appeared beside him, her reflection in the glass showing an expression beyond her 16 years. Was it worth it, Dad? She asked quietly. Destroying everyone who hurt you? Being right but alone? Boyd considered the question carefully. The betrayal had been real. The punishment had been justified. He had reclaimed what was his and established boundaries that could never again be violated. Yes, he said finally, his voice firm. I don't forgive betrayal. I don't forget disloyalty. That's who I am. Amber studied her father's unyielding profile. Then I feel sorry for you, she said softly. Because one day, you'll realize revenge wasn't worth the price you paid. She left him standing alone at the window, master of a diminished kingdom, victorious but isolated. Boyd Callahan had won every battle in his war for revenge. The cost had been his family, his connections, perhaps even parts of his humanity. But he had stayed true to his principles. Betrayal would never be forgiven, loyalty would never be taken for granted, and consequences would always be enforced. If that meant facing the future alone except for the tentative relationships with his children, so be it. Some prices were worth paying. Some lessons needed to be learned. And some men, like Boyd Callahan, would rather stand alone than ever trust again. The snow continued falling outside the window, covering the garden in a clean white blanket, burying the past beneath its silent weight. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.